Perfect. George, are we all good to go here? Let me know when you're ready.
Think so. Just a reminder for all competitors to change their name to your name dash the team you're from, just so we can make sure that everyone is here. But I think we're good to get started, Nick.
Perfect. Well, hi everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're tuning in from. We have competitors from all around the world this year, so really thanks for joining us this morning here in Toronto. Thank you for joining us for the first kickoff of QEC 2021. This year, we are opening up most of our events to the public on both Zoom, but also YouTube, which we're live on right now. My name is Nick, and alongside me is the co-chair, George, for this year's QEC. Before we get started, we want to provide a land acknowledgement of the territory that Queen's University in the QEC is situated upon. Queen's University is situated on the unceded traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, and following a forced relocation, the Haudenosaunee peoples. To this day, it continues to be the home of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee peoples, as well for a significant Métis community and First Peoples from other nations across Turtle Island. To acknowledge this traditional territory is to recognize its longer history, one that predates the establishment of the earliest European contact. It is also to acknowledge this territory's significance of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people who lived and continue to live upon it. People whose practices and spiritualities are tied to the land and continue to develop in relationship to the territory and its other inhabitants today. We are grateful to be able to live, learn, and play upon these lands. The acknowledgement is only one contribution to each individual's personal reconciliation for what happens on and to these lands carries a greater weight. To recognize that we must take the reconciliation a priority, the QEC team will continue to raise the voices for Indigenous communities. The QEC team, reconciliation means to respect and support Indigenous communities in the present moment and to restore a relationship with them on an ongoing basis.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick, for that acknowledgement. To get started, we also want to give a huge shout out to Smith IT and Ben for helping us run all of the webinars that you'll be having over the remainder of the competition. And we hope that through the next few days, you'll have a chance to network with all of the competitors, sponsors, judges, and the executive team. All of the executive QEC team will be found in our white QEC hoodies, which you'll be able to tell apart. And if you haven't, you'll still get the opportunity to meet with a few other people from QEC as well. For those new to the QEC, we're a team of undergraduate students from Queen's University. And this year marks our 33rd year, making us one of the largest and longest running undergraduate startup competitions around the globe. Just this year, we're excited to announce that we have $42,500 in a monetary prize pool. And in terms of in-kind prizes, we have $40,900. Now, those in-kind prizes include consulting, UI services, and cloud services. And over the years, we've seen teams go on and achieve incredible feats, whether that be being acquired by Google, competing on other global scales such as TechCrunch, Battlefield, and even winning, as well as using our prize money to hire their first employees and then open their first offices. So it's really exciting to see the teams that come out to the QEC and what they accomplish with that. So with that said, we also want to stress that prize money isn't the only thing you can take away from QEC. Over the next couple of days, you'll have a chance to see a lot of speakers, of which the first one will be Kevin, who you'll have very soon in front of you. There's a lot of lessons you can take from them, so highly recommend you try and take us away as many opportunities and lessons as you can from them. So I'll pass it off to Nick to kind of continue.
Perfect. Thanks, George. We have a great lineup of teams this year. I think if we can thank COVID for something, it's the fact that we're now able to bring people from all over the world together to compete, and all these young entrepreneurs to come together to compete and help grow their business and their dreams and make it a reality. So it's really cool that we have 15 teams out this year, really high quality teams that we're really looking forward to see. Every year, me and George have been a part of the QEC for 3 years now. Every year when we come back, we're blown away by the quality of competitors that come through the door and pitch to us every single year. So this year is no different, and we're really looking forward to what's in store. But of course, we couldn't have done this and wouldn't be able to hold this competition annually if it wasn't for our prize sponsors. This year, we're really grateful to have Peter Wilson as our platinum sponsor, alongside Michelle Romano and Anatoly Melnichuk, Tom Kinnear, and Robert Jansen. These partnerships represent an exceptional commitment to the entrepreneurship community and, most importantly, our competitors. And these individuals here have been, supporters for the QEC for the past few years and really provide us with the mentorship, but also the monetary funds to allow us to make the event happen. In addition to our top 3 prizes, we have exceptional partners who provide awards that are open to all top 15 teams. Although each is maybe different in their industry, they all really align with the values of helping the next generation of entrepreneurship and innovation. We have DDQIC, our Innovation Award sponsor, alongside Wolfram Alpha, Coventus, Mako Design and Invent, and Interbix, providing custom awards. So this year, George mentioned that we do have the prize pool, but also those mentorship opportunities. And these are the companies that really align with that mission of really helping the next generation of entrepreneurs really succeed, and we're happy to have them on board this year. Furthermore, we'd like to also thank some of our general sponsors who are equally devoted to entrepreneurship and innovation and supported us this year as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. We also have a full list of speakers and workshops this year, and you'll see them in the next slide. They've been a part of entrepreneurship and innovation for their whole lives, whether it be in creating companies, funding them, or helping them grow. So super excited to have this list of speakers out this year. We have Kevin first. Next, you'll have Kosi coming up right after, and then we'll go into Michael, Travis, and Stephanie over the next day or two. So it'll be really exciting seeing what they present and what we can take away from it. So this always proves every single year to be one of the greatest learning opportunities of QEC. So highly recommend you tune into those. So beyond just the speakers, another great learning opportunity comes with the workshops that we'll be having. We'll have Interpix and Out Loud Speaker School presenting workshops to the competitors, whether that means how do you revamp your UI, how do you improve your user interface for people who are joining, as well as how do you improve your pitches. So Will and Carter will speak to that a little bit more over the next few days, and hopefully you can apply some of those to your companies and your pitches that you'll be doing for today and tomorrow. And then another major opportunity for networking and learning comes with the judges that you'll see as well for today and tomorrow. For the top 15 judges, we have a crazy list of people coming, whether it be from VC companies, from innovative parts of their organizations, or simply people who've created technology companies and have invested in them as well. So they'll be coming out to the competition. They'll be able to provide you with those mentorship opportunities if you reach out to them. And one of the greatest opportunities that we always see that lies within these judges is taking away their feedback that they provide for your pitches, regardless of whether or not you make it into the top 6. It always proves to be useful to see what lessons they can provide. And then finally, for our top 6 judges, we have a lot of judges who have come out to our competition over the past few years, and they have proven to be direct supporters of the QEC, as well as constantly invested in organizations that have come out in the past. So highly recommend connecting with those as well. And I'll pass it off to Nick to talk a little bit about the itinerary, and then we'll go into Kevin's speech.
Perfect. Thanks, George. So yeah, we have a full day of events lined up for today and tomorrow, all really insightful. We're really happy with the lineup of speakers, like George talked about, the workshops, but more importantly, the insights that the competitors will experience from the judges. So here you can see a quick snapshot of what we have in store for today and tomorrow. Some of the events are open to the public, some are not for the competitors and all viewing at home today. But today we have Kosi Stobbs after Kevin speaks, the workshop from Will, then we'll have Meet the Executive Networking, followed by lunch break, then the top 15 pitches, and then we'll have a speaker from Michael this evening, and then me and George will announce the top 6 teams competing tomorrow. So, full days of, events today and tomorrow, so you won't want to miss out. So really looking forward to it, and I'll pass it off to George here to introduce Kevin.
Awesome. So with that said, we'd like to give the stage to Kevin just to provide a few words of advice to our competitors before we begin the competition. Kevin is the founder and president of Mako Design and Invent. It's one of the largest consumer industrial design firms in Canada with offices in Ontario, Texas, and Florida. Kevin has spoken at numerous events across the globe for entrepreneurship and startups and product innovation. So he has a lot of lessons that he can provide. And Mako Design, his company, has been named as one of the fastest growing organizations by numerous magazines in Canada and America. So without further ado, I'd like to present to you guys Kevin.
Well, good morning, everyone. And hopefully, we don't have anybody too far around the world waking up at 2 a.m. to attend this, but that's all part of the hustle. I must say, I've enjoyed giving these keynotes prior years to QEC, getting to meet the teams and all that. This year is obviously a little bit different. I certainly miss that element, but I'm still excited to be in front of you now today. And look, now we can do it in our pajama pants. So there are silver linings here. I've only got a few minutes to talk here. So there's three key things I want to talk to, especially given the time that we're in right now. Number one is in terms of essentially a recession or hard times. And I know we hear a lot of stuff in the media. There's a lot of things to drag us down. There is a lot of strain and a lot of pain in the world. But for entrepreneurship, that leads to opportunity. And for entrepreneurship, hard times in a big industry don't necessarily correlate to hard times for a startup. Look, I started my business first time around in 1999 in high school. Massive recession. That was the dot-com bubble. I went into recession number one. Then when I actually went through university and decided to do this full time, turning down job offers, with signing bonuses and all that good stuff, I went full time in 2007, which was the mortgage crisis, recession number two. So double whammy, recession one, recession two. That was how I started my business. But I'll tell you this, as a startup, recessions don't matter to small folks. Big companies take forever to pivot. You look at auto manufacturers, they're planning 10 years ahead for the cars that they're releasing. The stuff that we do as a design firm, and we're sketching and creating and ideating for many firms, we're looking 5, 10, sometimes even 15 years out. So it's very hard to move that ship. Small startups, you're nimble, you're lean, you're mean. And also, worst case scenario, let's say that your specific industries got crushed in a hard time like this. Look at COVID. Maybe your industry's down 50% in revenue. That doesn't make a difference to a startup. All you need is a tiny, tiny piece of the market to be a multi-million-dollar business. And if you're innovating and creating and coming up with this new business, that means there's a huge breadth of opportunity out there, even in the worst of times. But also, in the worst of times, that means that if you can build something, if you can create something beautiful when everybody's looking left, you're looking right, create something amazing then. That is what creates the greatest growth when the economy takes back over again, right? Small business only needs a tiny piece of a pie to be highly successful. So I'll tell you, hard times aside, there's a secret to success that you may have heard, but I really want to drive this one in because it is essentially your near guaranteed ticket to making a multi-million-dollar business, especially for the people here at QEC, especially for the people competing, because you are already high achievers. So for you, this is a guaranteed formula to work. And it really comes down to hustle. And I know that's a buzzword and you've heard it a zillion times, but let's break it down to make it really, really simple in terms of what hustle means. I've worked with over 1,000 product startups, and I can tell you quantifiably that anybody who wakes up at 6 a.m, goes hard at it for until 6 p.m, then takes their time to do whatever they want to do. They do that 5.5, 6 days a week. They do that for 10 years. They are multimillionaires. I will challenge you to find somebody who has done that and is not a multimillionaire. It is nearly impossible. And in fact, when you look into those cases, usually you find out, well, you know what, they did 60 games of golf that year or whatever else. They decided to do 4 months backpacking to find themselves, to readjust. The hustle is almost a guaranteed formula to make it work. And if you just follow that principle, some people might do it earlier. You might do it in 5 years. Others might take a little bit longer. It might take 15 years. But either way, no matter what way you cut it, if you drive hard and you're passionate about what you do, you are nearly guaranteed to succeed. So the amazing thing about everybody that's watching this right now is Many of you are already working on those businesses. Many of you will create those businesses. Many of you will find those partnerships as it comes out of this competition, or as it comes out of your career. So you can easily make this happen. And that means 10, 15 years from now, you're a very young person. And that value of creating such a powerful business at that point in time will do wonders for you, for your family, et cetera. And the way to enable this hustle, just to really be sure that you nail it, is essentially really two things. A, shoot big. Don't think small. If you're starting a new business, if you're creating something to change the world, uh, your goal shouldn't be to make a salary of 100K. Your goal should be to make millions, because you're really doing something that's changing the world. So if you're shooting big, and if this is something you care about, and inevitably if you're at this competition, it's because you already believe that. Shoot big, number one. And number two, proactively and consistently learn. If you do those two things in combination with a hustle, no question about it, you will absolutely conquer in what you achieve to do. It may not necessarily mean that you won't pivot or change, but that's all part of your learning, your development, and part of the hustle. So some of the things that's very easy to learn in terms of development is obviously books, podcasts, but take it one step further and think about mentors. The interesting thing about mentors is I run a product design firm, worked with thousands of clients over the years, and very few of them actually have a mentor or strong expertise in the field in which they are actually trying to develop a product for. So find somebody who's successful in the industry that you're going after. It doesn't necessarily have to be a competitor. It could be somebody ancillary to what you're doing, but find that person. If you have to, pay them if you can't find anybody that'll do it for free. But you'll be surprised. When you start asking around, there's a lot of people who are willing to help the next generation. As you've seen, some of the amazing sponsors of this, some of the amazing financial partners, some of the amazing judges that are here. These are all people who are helping the next generation. So really reach out. Someone that you can look for mentorship as well is vendors. Right? If you're hiring somebody to work for you, ask to speak to the owner of that company. Tell them what your big business plan is and use their experience to help you with that. And I'll give you one quick one here in terms of money, because the first thing that usually people say when they think about hustle and whether or not they'll truly be successful, number one thing is, well, I don't have money. Money has never been a barrier to success. It's only what people think is a barrier to success, but very few entrepreneurs will tell you that that was a barrier to their success. Think of any multi-billion-dollar company you know. How many of those founders themselves put $1 billion into that company? Zero. They all developed that through help from others. The crisis that we've had here has created the single highest savings rate among households in North America in human history. There is lots of money out there. Money will not be a criteria. If you hustle, if you learn, and if you shoot big, the money will come. Everyone in this room has a capability to make a multi-million-dollar business or a multi-hundred-million-dollar business. So go out there, get it, learn, hustle, and we'll make sure that it happens. Everyone, really appreciate the time. Really looking forward to the competition. Thanks again for having me as a speaker, and we'll see you soon. Take care.
Awesome. Kevin, we have a couple of questions for you if you have some time.
Sure, happy to.
Great. So the first one is, you mentioned reading more books and listening to podcasts. Do you have any recommendations?
Well, so along that, there's many, but along that hustle line, the 10X Rule by Grant Cardone. If you read that book and you follow that hustle, you will conquer. That is a fantastic book to really understand the value of hustling and understand the value of what the output is to your entire life, to your future, to your family, to your children, to your grandchildren, but then how to actually execute on that. Essentially what I've talked about in book form, done extremely well by one of the pioneers of understanding how to build massive businesses. So Grant Cardone, 10X Rule. Podcasts, there's lots. There's lots of really good podcasts. For those who are kind of getting off the ground, the Fire Nation is a great podcast. I think it's almost every day. Entrepreneurs on Fire, I think, is the actual title of it. So take a look at that one. And if you're kind of a little bit further along the line where you're actually starting to scale your business, the Scale Up podcast is very good. That also helps you kind of paint the picture for after you get out of startup mode, after you start to have customers, what do you do next? If you're in the product space, I actually just took over a product called the Product Startup. It's the biggest podcast in the consumer product development industry. If you have anything to do with hardware, certainly check that one out. I'm 4 episodes in on that one. It had 55, and I've taken it over. So I'm just learning about kind of the hosting side of podcasting now, which has been a lot of fun. But yeah, lots of stuff out there. Just the point is, you don't necessarily have to figure out exactly which one it is. Just start learning everything that you can, make it a priority, and also keep that 6 to 6 hustle.
Awesome. Okay, so Maria Smith, on that note of hustle, she actually asks a question. She says, how do you effectively balance being on the hustle and your personal life?
You don't. No, look, 6 to 6 gives you, gives you time afterwards to do whatever you want. Right. That is why it's a 6 to 6. You'll talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and they'll tell you eat, sleep, and breathe your business. That's an old school mentality and it doesn't work. You do need personal time, but people very much confuse personal time with doing everything that you want and then squeezing in your business efforts. The business should come first, especially because, especially this audience, you're young. So if somebody told you, for instance, you press this button and you do a good job of it, you do this for 10 years straight, I'll give you $10 million. Would you take it? Of course. Okay, that's simple. You have to work 12 hours a day though. Well, that's 10 years of your life, but all of a sudden you're set for life. The beauty of business is that is actually the guaranteed truth of entrepreneurship if you put that effort in, especially with this demographic. It's a smart group. Now, next level on top of that is you don't have to sit there and push a button. This is exciting work. It's not always going to be exciting. You're going to have some pain, but you have a really enjoyable journey along the way as well. So it's a win-win situation. You just have to commit first to the business. That business is something that you should be passionate about. So it's not work. This is your life. This is something you're actually doing for humanity, doing for society, that will eventually, as you do enough work, provide enough value, will start paying you very handsomely back. Only after you've provided that value to humanity as a priority. So if you stick to those hours, it does give you time. You can do lots between, let's say, 6, 7, 8 till 10. You can exercise, play sports, see friends, date, do whatever you want, read the books you want to watch, watch movies. You've got your weekends free. I would argue do a bit of work every day on the weekend too. But if you have to, you can take vacations, do all that sort of stuff. It doesn't mean you give life up, but it means you're prioritizing business first and everything else comes second, really.
Awesome. Fantastic. Couldn't agree anymore. But yeah. So Mark has another interesting question, which I know you mentioned money isn't a barrier to success. So he asks, what do you think is the barrier to success, or what do you think they should be wary of as a barrier to success?
Well, of everybody I've seen, I can tell I've seen people with tons of money, intelligence, and fantastic business ideas completely funk if they don't have the hustle. I have seen people dead broke who have mediocre ideas, who really struggled with education, never really wanted to learn or whatever else, but they are so passionate about what they're doing that they succeed. And I can tell you it's a 10-to-1 ratio of that one category to the other category. It really comes down to the effort that you put in. There is no shortcut. That book, the 10X Rule, it'll explain all of this in much better detail than I am here. But it talked to any entrepreneur that's made millions out there, and unanimously, even the ones you think got lucky or got a really lucky break, you will be very hard pressed to find that entrepreneur. And even if you do, that entrepreneur is the lotto winner. It's not good business to buy lotto tickets. But so many people look at the lotto winners and say, well, they got $10 million because they bought a lotto ticket. So I'm going to follow that. Well, that would be terrible advice. And everyone in this room would agree. However, they use that exact same methodology, but for business. Oh, I saw that business. They seem to win this lotto ticket and all of a sudden they're worth millions. When you actually talk to those people, let's look at somebody hilarious. The fat Jewish on Instagram. Okay. Everybody looks at that guy and is like, wow, I mean, he's this crazy character. He has this huge Instagram following. Yes, he's made tens of millions of dollars on his babe stuff because he can promote it. That guy tried so much stuff before the fat Jewish took off. He was a natural hustler. And now he finally hit something that kicked. It was only because he drove and drove and drove until the point that he found that thing that really took him to the next level. It all comes down to hustle.
It's very fair. No, yeah, that I think the one thing that I've been told constantly over the years at QEC is always hustle is the most important thing when creating any sort of organization. So I guess Philippe Radovitsky has another interesting question for you, which is related to your company, Mako. What was the biggest challenge you faced when you were creating Mako?
Well, like many of you here, we were really pioneering a space. The whole concept was how do we take high-end global caliber product design and apply it to startups? Anyone in the industry, any big design firm said, "Oh, you're nuts. That's a failure. We hate startups. Like avoid entrepreneurs like the plague. If you have to work with them, like do it, but you're just stepping stone to get to those big corporate fat cat juicy clients that have revolving monthly billable contracts." And I thought that was ridiculous. So not only was I facing two um, complete, essentially complete collapses of the economy, but I was also in an industry that really didn't believe in the method that we took on. So one of the big challenges to us was actually educating the market. And part of what was very important to us in the early, before I could afford it, before I had the time to do it, I still spent efforts on working with the overall product development community, the entrepreneurship community. I was giving talks and we were donating some small scraps of money that we had in the very early days to very early competitions in design and product development. I was doing lecturing at universities where I could for product development and whatnot. I still teach the Masters of Engineering program at Ryerson for the commercialization thing in certain programs. So really giving back to the community and being passionately involved in what you have can help you overcome many of those barriers, because what that did is indirectly led to better caliber designers coming in our door to actually work for us, better partners that now knew about us, and then of course better clients that were starting to come in the door that starts helping to pay the bills. So that's a bit unique to our situation, but one of our big bottlenecks was education, and one of our even bigger bottlenecks was really pioneering an industry that nobody believed in at the time.
That makes sense. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that either. I'm completely aligned with everything you said today, so I've really enjoyed it. But yeah. So the last question, which I guess we'll have time for, is by Drew, and he asks, "Do you think every business contributes to humanity?" I know you mentioned a little bit earlier on, as long as the business is contributing to humanity, it's positive and it'll succeed. So the question is, do you think every business contributes to humanity?
No, some businesses are terrible. Some entrepreneurs know they're in a terrible business. It also makes for bad business. As you start to listen to these podcasts and listen to more that, on the learning side, you have your mentors and whatever else, you'll find that it's very difficult to succeed in the long run with a bad business, meaning bad for humanity, bad for people, whatever else. Of course, we all know examples that we could argue that with, but it's very, very difficult in this day and age, especially with online reviews, with peer reviews, with digital communities that very quickly can enable these things. If you don't really believe in what you're doing, if you're not truly creating value for your customer, if they're spending $1 with you, they should be getting $5 in value back. If they're spending $1 with you and you're giving them 50 cents of value, you will not last. You may get a little win here and a little win there, but what you don't know is you're losing out on the big, good, great contracts that actually could benefit humanity and actually be good. And it's just more enjoyable. Once you get into your groove where you're actually doing great things for humanity, people love what you do and they're paying you for it. That's what creates scale, exponential scale. That's what that's the game changer between a small business and a big one, and how one scales and one really performs and the other doesn't. Don't worry about the people, the cheats, the this, the that you see out there. Just don't be one of them. That isn't the way to success. Very few people succeed. Many people try. Very few actually succeed in that mentality. Even if they do, it's probably short run. You'll see them. They end up in jail, or their business goes bust, or they've ended up screwing up too many people that they're sued and their business is done. Right. So forget those people. Just find something great and focus on that, and the money will come eventually.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you today. You've heard it here first. Hustle in creating a company that is absolutely changing the world for the better. Kevin, thank you so much. Really enjoyed the speech and the answering of the questions. Thank you for coming out today.
Thanks, everyone. Hey, good luck with the competition as well, and looking forward to seeing the pitches.
Have a good one. And I'll pass it off to uh, Kosi to present to you a little bit later today, but we'll have an introduction for him first.
For sure. So, do I sound okay on my end? Yeah. Okay. So, hi everyone. I'm going to be introducing Kosi. My name's Shivam. So, Kosi Stobbs is a true rags to riches success story, which was highlighted in his book F Broke, Let's Get Rich, which made Amazon Canada's bestseller list in business and finance. He has a strong mix of engineering and branding skills that have given him a unique ability to foster growth of the companies that he owns. He has a deep understanding of business and financing, and this has proven to help him in identifying strong businesses and real estate opportunities and then building them from the ground up. He's the CEO of Specific Mechanical Systems, a brewery manufacturer, as well as part of Canada's top 40 under 40. Kosi is truly unique and transformative entrepreneur, and I'd love to give him the floor to chat about his experiences. So without further ado, take it away, Kosi.
Hello, everyone. See how this sounds good. Thumbs up if this sounds good for the people that can see visually. Okay. I've got a presentation. If someone can enable my screen.
Ben, would you be able to help him out with that?
Someone just gotta, whoever the host is, they gotta enable my share screen.
Recording stopped.
Second, I think Ben will do it.
Recording in progress.
Yeah, I'm working on it here.
Okay, we're good to go. I got sharing capabilities. Okay. You guys can see my screen now?
Perfect.
Thumbs up. Okay, perfect. All right, I'll get rocking and rolling. So I got one screen, and these series of these few points here. By the time I'm done, you're gonna have a really good understanding of who I am, and what I'm about, right? And I share this slide deck or these stories with pretty much everybody that I engage with, participate with on a business level. I kind of lead with this. I've actually used these stories and they've helped me raise tens of millions of dollars, whether it be for acquisitions, building new business partners. So I'm going to share the stories with you because by the end of these stories, you're going to have a really clear understanding of who Kosi is, how I did what I did in life, and all the things that made me be who I am. Okay. So we're going to go through these stories here. So number one story is about a bus pass. And then before I jump to that picture's me in grade 4, right? So if you go look at me online, you'll always see my hair is a little bit wild. My clothes are pretty outlandish. But the reason why they're like that is because that's who I am, right? And that's me in grade 4. I picked those pants with the fluorescent and the handprints on them. Flintstone shirt. That was my style then. That's who I've always been. And that's who I've never tried to be anything different. Right. And that's what makes me who I am. There's an air of authenticity that comes about me is what people say most. Right. And that comes from being just who you are. And we're all different. We're all unique. And my belief has always been to embrace that uniqueness. Right. A lot of people in the beginning would say, by being yourself, it's going to limit you because, the business world is not like that. And I view it the complete opposite. I think that by being yourself and who you are, it really helps you get further because people can smell authenticity, right? They can tell if you're trying to be something you're not. And when you do that, it rubs them the wrong way, right? So first story is about my bus pass. So when I was in grade 6, just do that. It's grade 4. Sorry. When I was in grade 4, I lost my bus pass one month, right? And that was heart-wrenching for me because the bus pass at the time there's like $80 for the month. But I knew my parents couldn't afford to buy me another bus pass, right? They saved up all their money, and being able to afford a bus pass to three boys, and being able to afford a bus pass for us was a large expense for my parents, right? And this was pretty early in the month. So for the rest of the month, I walked to school. I walked to school and I walked home. And my oldest brother actually walked with me. He had his bus pass. He walked with me because he didn't want me to walk alone. And I walked because I didn't want to have the conversation with my parents about the fact that I lost my bus pass, because I was afraid to tell them that I had lost it because it was a huge expense for the family. And that kind of underpins a lot of my childhood, right? We grew up very poor. We grew up in Edmonton, Alberta, right? And my dad, they had immigrated from Jamaica. And my dad worked on and off, right? He worked in the oil industry, and the oil industry is very cyclical. So he worked on as off, and my mom worked as a nanny. So we just didn't have a lot of money. And then I always remember thinking I never wanted to be in that situation. I never wanted to be in a situation when I grew up where I had to have this feeling about losing a bus pass. And it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but to us, it was a ton of money, right? Because we didn't have any. So that story kind of outlines why my drive is the way it is, right? I've always, from that age, I said, you know what? We don't have a lot of money to start with, but nobody's going to outwork me for nothing ever. And the next story that I have to share with you is about my dyslexia, right? So I am dyslexic. I struggle with reading. And in school, they always make you go around and everyone reads a sentence, right? In a book or a couple sentences. That was so nerve-wracking for me because it was a really uncomfortable situation to have to sit there and have to read, because I read like this, and then the kids would laugh. Now that curse ended up being a huge gift for me, right? Because one day the teacher says, we want you to do a presentation to the class. I knew one thing about me doing a presentation. I knew I was not going to come up there and read something in front of my classmates because it would go off horribly. So what I did was I went home and I wrote my speech, and I studied that speech for over 50 hours. When you take a 5-minute speech and you spend more than 50 hours on it, it ends up being phenomenal. Not because you're great, but because you've gone through it so many times. So I went and I gave that speech, and this is about grade 4, and I blew the whole roof off. The teacher was so impressed. They said, wow, Kosi, this is amazing. Now, up until this point, everyone thought I was the idiot in the class because of how I read when it was time to read. But finally, I was getting accolades saying, wow, you're such an incredible public speaker. You're so great. Because I was up there, I had mannerisms, I had actions, because I didn't have to think about the speech. I've been through it so many times in so many different ways. I had so much going for me about that talk. And that was the first time that I saw the link between hard work and outcome. Meaning, if you put in a significant amount more effort than anybody else, your outcomes will be significantly better. The difference between me and the other classmates was not that I was any smarter, and it was not that at the time that I was much better speaker. It was that at the time that I spent 100 times more on the speech than they did. If they were spending 30 minutes on average, if I'm spending 100 times more and putting in that level of effort, I'm going to be that much better. And having those lessons early on really formulated who I became, right? It became a person who was determined not to live in poverty. I've done that. I don't want to do it again. And also a person who is willing to outwork everybody. Fast forward to the podcast story. The podcast story kind of really outlines who I am as an entrepreneur, right? Again, around that same age, I'm like 10 years old, and I'm out with friends, and I really want to buy candy. Now, keep in mind, my parents didn't have money. They didn't give us money for candy, but I wanted to buy candy. So I got two of my friends. We were hanging out, and I said, "Hey guys, let's go around the street and let's start collecting pop cans." Because I've seen people take pop cans and they turn them in, they get money for them, right? So we went around the neighborhood, we collected as many pop cans as we could. Was kind of slow in the beginning, but then we got to this one house, and it's like 80-20 rule. Sometimes you get one client that's like 80% of your business. And so one house, they came in, they just loved what we were doing, had bags and bags of pop cans. They gave them to us. We partnered with my friend's mom. She returned them in. We paid her gas money, and we ended up with $20, right? And you got to keep in mind, like, this is more money than I've ever seen personally in my life at the time. So we gave it $20. We split it three ways. I bought a ton of candy. And I came home with all this candy. My parents looked at me like, "Where did you get all this money from?" Right? Because they're concerned. Like, like, "What, did you steal it? We didn't leave you with money. How do you have this candy? Where'd you get it?" I explained to them the story. I said, "We did this." And really, that was my first, what I call my first business, right? My first business. And it was a great business because there was no really capital costs involved for startup money. Like, it was free. We just had to have the ambition to go around door to door and do it. And since then, I've started a lot of business, but more importantly, I buy existing businesses. Right, the core of what I do is buy businesses that have been around for 30 to 35 years. Right, I know you heard a little talk about startup, but I typically buy businesses that have been around for at least 30 to 35 years, and generally from guys that are retiring. I like businesses where they started themselves and they've kind of grown them up and then they're retiring, because what you can do with that sort of business is you can bring new age marketing techniques to them, things that they haven't tried. They spent 35 years doing their business organically and via word of mouth. You can then take it, turn it on its head, and introduce it to Facebook ads and all the rest of it that they hadn't thought of. So taking these old businesses and incorporating new uh, marketing strategies to them can really help just grow them like bonanzas. And your cost of acquisition can end up being quite favorable for a lot of these businesses that have been around a long time and in areas that they hadn't looked at. So really, that's the kind of the crux of what I do in terms of when we do an acquisition and we grow them. And the last story that I wanted to share with you and by the end of this story, again, you'll have a complete full picture of who Kosi is, and you're going to remember this, right? So last story is about my brother, right? So in 2006, my brother was killed, right? He was involved. He was my older brother, 3 years older, the same one that walked with me every day when I couldn't. The same one that walked with me every day when I couldn't get to school, right? And he was a really good person at the core of his being, but he got involved in drugs and it ended up costing him his life, right? And I share this story because I think two things. I always think that if I was the older brother and I was able to show him the things that I did, because we both lived in poverty, we both wanted out, but he chose to sell drugs. And I always think to myself, if I was the older brother, his life, he'd probably still be alive today because I could have shown him a different path. And a lot of what I do in the businesses that I get involved in, what we want to do on the back end, is centered around me thinking that, you know what, a lot of people are in situations simply because they don't have anyone to show them that there's a brighter path, right? Drug money's, it's not easy money, it's hard money. And they do a lot of things that if they knew what I knew today, there's no way my brother would have been involved in that, right? I make 1,000 times more money than he's ever made, and I'm not saying that to be braggadocious, right? Um, and I'm not saying this to impress you; it's to impress upon you that there's a better outcome. But generally, by middle of January, I've made more money than the average Canadians made in a whole year. And again, I'm not saying that to impress you at all. I'm saying that because I've learned over decades and decades of acquiring businesses what to do and how to do it. And by that learning and learning about businesses and learning how they work, there's a tremendous upside opportunity, right? And today what I do is I take my business income, take my cash flows that come from the operating companies, and we just reinvest those to buy additional pieces of real estate and allow those to grow. and also by acquire different businesses. Like right now, last month I purchased a business, and I'm in the purchased a business. I'm in the process of purchasing another one that's going to close end of February, right? And I like to take on about 2 to 3 new businesses a year. And where does Kosi go from here? Because I think it's important that I share this story. Is I want to be Canada's first Black-born billionaire, and it was a dream for me 10 years ago. And today it's not a dream. Today it's very clear how to get there, right? It's a matter of just following that process. And I think it's important for young entrepreneurs to see what other people are doing that have made it, and try to get an understanding for what it is that they did to get where they were. Right? I modeled a lot of what I do off of Warren Buffett. And I said to myself, if Warren Buffett's got $100 billion, and if I do like 1/100th of that, that's $1 billion, a pretty big number. And some of the things you might look at them and say, I can't model, but then you can just keep looking at other ones that are successful and find ones that kind of matches something that you can get involved in. And I think the process that you guys are going through and building a business plan is fantastic. I think that the downside of it is that there's not many winners, but don't use this as an idea to stop what you're doing, is what I would say. Right now is the opportunity. You've taken that ambition to take that first step. Whether your thing wins or loses is irrelevant in my mind. Like, yeah, there's some money, but that money is peanuts. I'm gonna to compare to what you can do if you have a really good business idea. So don't give up if you don't win this competition, would be my thing. And you may not end up doing that exact same idea. You may make some tweaks, but never give up on yourself in terms of a business. First businesses I tried, they didn't go very well. It took a while for me to understand how business works. And you just don't understand it at this stage because you haven't done it enough. And then once you start to do it more, you understand more. So on that, I'm going to close because we've got 15 minutes and I've gone 1 minute over. So we're going to close that off. But I think I'll
Perfect.
turn it back to you guys.
Sounds good. Awesome. Thank you so much, Kosi, for that awesome talk. So we can now open up the floor for Q&A. So I see we have a couple questions in our Q&A section already. So the first one is from Maria. So she asks, how has mentorship helped you in your business, and which resources have you found the most helpful?
Excellent question. I think mentorship is critical to growth. I started off, so my background is engineering. I never touched on this in the talk. My background's in engineering, and I worked as an engineer for a lot of years. And I always wanted to be in business, but my dad told me to become an engineer, so I did it because that's what he said. But after I graduated, I tried to find business ideas as I was working as an engineer, and I ended up taking a job with a man who owned an engineering company. And when he owned it, he had 75 employees. I took that job because I wanted to learn how he did it. He started from scratch and he grew it to 75 people. And I didn't take the job for money. I took it to get close to him. And I would have taken that job for nothing. And what I would do is on Saturdays, he always came in on Saturdays. So I would always come in on Saturdays. And literally on Saturdays, it was just him and I. And I would walk into his office and I would just sit in his chair. And I think the first time I did it, he was probably weirded out by it. Like, why is this, young engineer just sitting in the owner's office? And I would just sit there. But eventually he started talking to me. And I would sit there and we'd have these conversations. And he would tell me things about how he built his business and how he targeted new clients and how he targeted new ventures. I've learned so much from him. And I've carried that throughout in terms of how to target key clients for growth opportunities. I mimicked him because he did it to go from 2 or 3 people to 75, and then while I was there, we went from 75 to over 400 employees. And I what, I can really do that. I can do what he did and try it that way. So, really good question. It's critically important. You don't know what you don't know. Number one, read a lot, and number two, link yourself up with people who've done what you're trying to do.
Awesome. Okay, so now let's move on to the second question here. So this is from Mark. So Mark says, you talked a lot about the link between hard work and success. What are your thoughts on motivation to work hard, and what helps you to not break concentration and push to work hard every single day?
Yeah, so it's a really good question, Mark. And I almost think, I do believe is weird. I think good is the absolute enemy of greatness, right? If you have a good life, you're not going to give up a good life for a great life. And that's why they say like 80% of of millionaires and a higher percentage of billionaires are self-made. Is because like if I had a really awesome life and upbringing and I, became a doctor, there's no way I'm doing what I do today, right? Like it's just a good life. Like why would I change that? Or a lawyer, why would I change good to come? But because I had nothing and because I wanted so much more out of life, I set my goals a lot bigger. And I think a lot of it has to do with where you set your life goals and expectations. So I built pretty lofty goals when I was in my 20s. My brother's death was huge on me, right? And I've always wanted to honor him. So, the idea of helping educate kids in starting in Jamaica to help them go through high school, university if they couldn't afford it, to allow them better opportunities was big for me. So those became my goals. My goals and became bigger than me. And my goals became bigger than me. That's when the hard work just kicked in, saying, okay, I don't have a choice but to be successful. There's no other option. And all those nights where it's super unmotivating, I think about my end goal. And I actually have a vision board. I built the money vision boards and just like goal plans. And I think for me, it helps a lot. I have a vision board, I keep it by me and I look at it and I say, okay, here's where I'm trying to get to. And are the things that have happened in my life, are they helping me get there?
Awesome. Okay, hopefully that answers your question, Mark. So now moving on to the next one. We have a question from Alex here. So he says, what's the exact criteria you look for in the businesses you acquire yearly, and how do you measure your goals?
Yeah, so great question. So how do I look for the criteria? I guess that's simpler. So the business has to be around for at least 20 years, right? And I'm looking for businesses that have, uh, generally speaking, at least 50 employees minimum. And the reason why I want it to be around for 20 years, 20 years, it's been around for 20 years and I can see future growth. Reason why, because for me, if a business has been around for 20 years and then I take over, is a high expectation that it can make 30 years, right? Because it's proven itself. And also over that period of time, it's developed its own brand identity and place in the marketplace. So it's got a really good, strong brand core around it. So I'd rather pay a premium for something that's been around for 20 years. So 20 years, and that's why. And then I'm looking for uh, consistent, consistent earnings. And I look a lot at margin. I'm looking for a minimum margin and consistent earnings. If it hits those criteria, and the reason why I have at least 50 people is because I'm not actually going to work in the business, right? It has to have its own management structure. And I generally find that when companies get to at least over 50, they start to generate their own management team, management structure. And then that's kind of there. And then, and ultimately, the last piece is something that I can help grow. If I believe I can help it grow, then I want to buy it. If I don't think I can help support it grow, I don't get involved. And I say that's my general criteria. There's always exceptions. Like I have purchased businesses that haven't been around for 20 years. But generally speaking, that's the criteria that I look at.
Sweet. Okay, so now moving on to Jack's question here. So Jack says, "Hi, Kosi. Curious how you diversify and grow your personal wealth in order to achieve your short-term or long-term financial goals."
Yeah, I don't I don't believe in diversification. And I know that goes against what most people teach. Well, I shouldn't say I don't believe it. I'm going to rewind that statement. If you don't know what you're doing, diversify, right? It's critically important to diversify if you do not know what you're doing. Um, and by don't know what you're doing, and I mean like, an expert in the area, then by all means diversify and get as much spread out as you can. Um, but if you are really knowledgeable, then there's no need to diversify. Do what you know how to do best, right? And I'll give you a couple of really good examples, right? And it'll make sense to you when I give you these examples. Like if Bill Gates is starting a software company and he comes to me and says, Kosi, I'm going to start a software company. Would you like to throw $1 million in? My answer is yes. And if he even comes to people that don't have $1 million, they're going to find $1 million to put it in because it's Bill Gates. He understands software, and that company is going to do well. And we all kind of know that intuitively, right? Because that's his lane. If I was going to start a software company, that company would fail miserably, right? My background is in analyzing long-term businesses. Most of them are in a manufacturing space. And the reason why I like manufacturing is because I get right from manufacturing, there's a total value chain there that is a longer topic, but there generally can be bigger margins if you go from the value chain right to the consumer and you bypass a bunch of intermediaries. If you go from making it to the consumer, there's a whole much more margin and it gives you more opportunity to play price points. But I found it really critical for me to not diversify, right? If you look at the wealthiest people in the world, they're very singular companies that got them there, right? One company, look, Elon Musk, one company, Tesla, right? Jeff Bezos, one company, Amazon. You go down the list, it's all like one company. They're not diversified at all. And because you can't it's very difficult to grow. It's very difficult to be really good a bunch of different times. You need to kind of narrow it in.
Awesome. Okay, so that's all the time we have for questions. So with that being said, on behalf of myself and the entire QEC executive team, we really want to thank you, Kosi, for coming out and speaking about your past experiences about your life and growing up as an entrepreneur. I'm sure a lot of us here, not only on the executive, but as the competitor as well, really valued your talk, and they're going to take those learnings and advice and propel themselves forward to be the future leaders of tomorrow. So yeah, we really want to thank you. So virtual round of applause.
Most welcome. It's been an absolute, it's been a joy and pleasure. Appreciate it, guys.
Awesome. Thank you. So just wanted to remind all the competitors that the Out Loud workshop will begin at 11. So you have to leave this webinar and go on the platform All in the Loop. And then from there, you can join the webinar at 11 a.m. All right. See you there, guys.